Hey everyone, welcome to day 3. And I'm going to just talk briefly about the next thing we'll do, which is to move into breakout groups to discuss these objectives more. So in the breakout groups, they will be randomly assigned. So you will be with people from different advisory groups on purpose. And the idea is to be able to talk more about the objectives. You will have a facilitator in your room with you. They know who they are. They will be looking for assistance, perhaps with some note taking. When we come back together, we will be summarizing briefly some of the findings from the discussions. And we will ask you as participants in those discussions to share a highlight. So be thinking while you're in the group about what you want to share with the group. You will share it in the chat. We don't have time to share out loud for everyone. So be thinking about that as well. While you're in the breakout groups, the goal is to discuss opportunities for collaboration, and it's also to think about the next steps we want to take for a more sustainable future for our African Great Lakes. Now, one of the things that I want to make clear is that our goal is not to change the objectives that have been stated here. We can add and ask questions, try to get clarification, but we're not trying to change what's already been stated. We just want to use this opportunity to discuss it further, think about how we can collaborate across lakes, across basins, for example, and to think about what we might want to add perhaps as suggestions, but we will not be doing any final editing or changing these objectives for the groups. But of course, we've had lots of great comments in the chat and out loud. So bring those comments to your discussion group so you can elaborate on them further. Remember that we won't have necessarily all the answers today. So if you have questions, your questions are valuable, bring them up. We may need to circle back on answers to those questions in terms of, for example, if you ask about a specific objective and you don't have someone in that group who can answer it, that's okay. Let's capture the question and we'll keep on moving. So the idea is to have these breakout groups. They will last for about 25 minutes or so, and then we will come back together to summarize and close out our meeting. So if there are any clarifying questions right now, please put them in the chat. And otherwise, we're going to move into breakout groups. What will happen is you will be assigned to the breakout group, and you will be asked on the screen to click to join the breakout group. And that's what we're going to do next. Again, we will come back together at the end to summarize and to close out the meeting. We're going to go around and I will call out the different breakout groups, and I'm going to call out by the facilitator because that's the only person I know for sure who was in the room with the groups. And then if you're going to do the report out, or if you have someone in your breakout room who's doing the report out, we're just going to do really brief report outs, just 1 minute, 2 minutes maybe, but let's hear from the different groups. And Dimple, how about if we start with your group?
Sure. And I have a couple of pages of notes, so I will not do it justice if anyone wants to speak up. I think that we had a really great discussion in our group, and the crux of it, I guess, the more mechanical, collaborative opportunities were around research projects, about having a database of the scientists and the expertise that we have around the ACARE tables, doing more of the kind of publications that were done last year. So joint publications. Someone said we should be publishing in high impact journals, looking at science and nature to kind of elevate ACARE's position and messaging to the world. But then some of the discussions that we actually kind of ended up talking about a bit more is the role of ACARE itself, to make sure that ACARE is understood in the African context. So making connections with regional groups, SADC, African Union, kind of moving into or finding a way to get our evidence and our science base from the groups that are represented at ACARE to the broader government funding type tables, decision-making tables. And there was quite a bit of discussion around, what merit that would have. Angela brought up a really good point of how ACARE has within kind of in the African Great Lakes context, there are so many other organizations. So ACARE kind of needs to define itself, make itself known to some of those broader groups. I'll leave it at that. I know I missed lots. There was a lot more flavor to it, and I will capture it in my notes. But anyone else, Fabrice, John, Ken, Angela, anyone who, if you want to add a couple of points.
Yeah, maybe just a quick one. Is that aspect of increasing visibility of ACARE? We need also to look at that as well, both nationally, regionally, continentally, even internationally. And that I know now we believe, and I believe that COVID scare will be limited in the years to come, and it should be done physically rather than virtual. So we should start planning to see how ACARE is on ground physically rather than virtual. So yeah, visibility. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So also just to say that we will be having a summary of this meeting and the findings from the meeting. So Dimple's notes and whoever is sharing notes with Dimple, those things will be taken into consideration for the findings. So if we don't capture everything in the 1 minute summaries here, don't worry, we will keep that on the radar. I'm going to go over to Zeph and ask Zeph if your group could report out.
Thanks, Steph. My group, we were 7 in number, and I had my able secretary, Talent. So Talent, I would invite you to give just a brief summary of our discussions and the two-way forward we had.
The moment. Okay, thank you, Zeph. I will do that. So thank you everyone. So we were 8 in attendance, and Zeph was our chair. So on the first question, what is interesting about the objectives? We had the first comment that there are variations in the objectives and some overlaps among the groups. Variations depends on the level of development of research facilities for the lakes. So we noted that there are some lakes which have got much more developed facilities than the others. And the other issue was that most of the issues are cross-cutting across the groups. And there was a specific suggestion for Lake Victoria that at Lake Victoria, we need to have input into the core pollution sources, e.g. internal loading from the sediments. And there was also another suggestion that we should try to work with multiple stakeholders, including fisheries and environmental organizations. And the other issue for Lake Victoria was that capacity of laboratories is very low to handle the required monitoring. And there was also another comment on data sharing and data loss that needs to be addressed. And still on that same question, there was also issues of harmonizing development plans for all the lakes, carrying out same research on all lakes. And it was also mentioned something about the eDNA method to characterize fish species and to protect biodiversity. On the second question, what are the opportunities to better leverage collaboration? The first one was harmonization of plans to enable cooperative analysis and collecting all data collected by different stakeholders to prevent data loss and enhance data sharing, and learning different modeling tools to better understand the lake ecosystems, and also to learn from other regions and compare notes. And for next steps for ACARE, there is need to collect data, e.g. data repositories and information on all the lakes as an initial step to establish what is there. And then participating in monthly meetings of other groups, for example, sending representatives. So that's all that we have from our group. Thank you.
Great, thank
Wonderful.
you very much. And I'm afraid we don't have time to have additional comments. So if you have comments that are additional, feel free to put them in the chat or send them directly to Zeph. I'm going to go to the next group, and I'm going to ask Ben if your group can report out.
Sure, I'll report. We had 7 or 8 people in our group as well. We kind of came away with 4 main points. The first was a takeaway from the international presenters and how this region, or our region, the African Great Lakes, can really learn from what other projects are doing, like the project in the Mekong River Valley and the North American Great Lakes. They're kind of comprehensive collaboration and infrastructure and that sort of thing. And that really led into the three kind of takeaway points for the group, what the objectives would be going forward. And one would be to build a stronger network, or to continue to build the network in the region and include more people from government ministries, government agencies, that it seems to be an underrepresented group in the advisory groups and in meetings like this. The second main point that we wanted to raise was that we really need to develop protocols for data sharing. That collaboration with data is extremely important. It has lots of room for improvement, and that's something that we should really be focused on over the next year and few years. And the third main point was developing the physical infrastructure of labs and research centers and programs on the lakes themselves, and finding both the funding for those, and figure out how those labs and research centers would be run, and whether it's through public means or through private means, and then how they will be supported going forward.
Great, thank you. And then we'll go over to Ted for your group, and then my group will be the final group to give a report out. Go ahead, Ted.
Thank you. We had 7 people in our group. We had great fruitful discussions. And here is the summary: inclusion, networking, information exchange. It's nothing new, and it's what we're trying to do in general. We highlighted the fact that virtual meetings are mostly information exchange, and that in-person meetings are critical for trust building, for getting projects and ideas out there. And we know that we're limited by COVID at the moment. The other ideas are that, and this has also been mentioned many times, I'm not sure if Richard Ogutu-Aweyo was on still, but his efforts in the past, similar to ours, are get members from other advisory groups together to find out what everyone is doing. So inter advisory group information, it needs to be done. And I think this keeps coming up because we have virtual meetings right now, but I think our annual in-person meetings will in the future get to this. The other aspects are mostly relationship wise, but include this networking and inclusion. We need to make sure that regional entities like LVFO, LTA, et cetera, are all included, which we're already doing, but also to keep in mind that some of the higher political authorities, the managers, need to have more of a relationship with ACARE and with the scientists. Oftentimes they have more resources, sometimes they have the technical ability, and sometimes they need us as much as we need them. So there's that back and forth of higher political administrative levels. Yep, I think that's about that encompasses
Great.
much of what we discussed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Okay, and for my group, I'm going to ask Cecilia to give our report out. Thank you, Cecilia.
Okay. Do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Good evening, everybody. In our group, I don't remember how many we were, and we strongly agree with the collaboration across our priority and objectives. And with that, we agree that collaboration is a key factor across the lake. During our discussion, we came up with 3 objectives. Objective number 1, we discussed about sharing research capacity, where tools which are available in some institutes might be underutilized, or instead of duplicating the tool, we could share the tool, the scientific tool. And through this, we can put center of excellence. And in this objective, we'll also discuss about sharing data like water quality, so as to bring consistency of how things are measured. And our second objective was to develop capacity regional and linking with different advisory groups, having training, and through this expertise will be developed. And exchange of scientists among institutions can also help in capacity building. And our last objective was community involvement in some data collection. This could be a local data or citizen science data collection, where school students can be invited in a research topic and given education to particular research topic like water pollution, and they could be aid or help in collection of data locally. Thank you.
Cecilia, thank you so much. If there are any extra thoughts, not extra, but supplemental thoughts, you can put them in the chat. If you feel that something that you mentioned in your group did not get mentioned here, feel free to add. And then with that, I will turn it over to Ted as we will move into closing out our meeting.